Welcome to our new episode.
The Rise and Fall of the Hittite Empire. In 1600 BCE, the world as known by the Egyptians, Mesopotamians, and Mycenaeans shifted forever, not because of armies or volcanoes, but because of a kingdom that rose from the heart of Anatolia, unknown to most, yet destined to challenge the greatest powers of the ancient world. The Hittites, once dismissed as a shadowy tribe and forgotten texts, would leave marks that echo in history long after their cities crumbled to dust. The story begins in the rugged hills of central Anatolia, where the city of Hattusa would one day rise as the heart of an empire. In the early 2nd millennium BCE, the region was a patchwork of small kingdoms, villages, and tribal territories. Among these, the Hatti people were slowly coalescing into a formidable force, guided by a lineage of ambitious rulers determined to carve their destiny against overwhelming odds. King Labarna I, one of the earliest kings recorded in Hittite chronicles, understood the delicate balance of diplomacy and conquest. The fertile plains around the Halys River allowed agriculture to flourish, providing the resources necessary to sustain growing armies. Labarna's vision extended beyond mere survival. He sought to transform a collection of city-states into a kingdom capable of standing shoulder to shoulder with the mighty Egyptian pharaohs and Mesopotamian kings. The Hittites' rise was not sudden. Generations of careful expansion, intermarriage with neighboring tribes, and shrewd alliances allowed them to consolidate power. By 1500 BCE, the Hittites were formidable, equipped with advanced chariots that outmaneuvered rival armies, a complex legal system that governed city and state, and cuneiform writing adapted from Mesopotamian scribes to preserve treaties, myths, and royal decrees. It was under King Hattusili I that the Hittite military truly transformed. Tales of his campaigns speak of sieges so meticulously planned that cities surrendered before the first arrow was loosed. Hattusili's chronicles detail the conquest of Aleppo and the subjugation of surrounding territories, establishing the blueprint for an empire that would endure for centuries. Yet his reign also revealed a vulnerability that would haunt the Hittites: internal dissent. Succession disputes and rebellions were constant threats, and the king's authority depended as much on his charisma and intelligence as on his armies. As the Hittite Empire expanded, it inevitably came into contact, and often conflict, with Egypt. The growing wealth of Anatolia attracted traders and adventurers alike, but it also drew the attention of pharaohs seeking to control the lucrative trade routes for metals, timber, and exotic goods. The famous Battle of Kadesh, fought around 2074 BCE between Pharaoh Ramses II and Hittite King Mutwateli II, became a defining moment. It was not merely a battle of armies, but of strategies, diplomacy, and propaganda. The Egyptians and Hittites, each claiming victory, eventually forged one of history's first known peace treaties, a document carefully preserved in cuneiform and hieroglyphics, an enduring testament to the sophistication of Hittite statecraft. The Hittites' power rested not only on military might, but on administrative innovation. Their cities were marvels of urban planning, with fortified walls, temples dedicated to storm gods and sun deities, and sprawling palaces that served as hubs of political, religious, and economic life. Hattusa, their capital, housed scribes, artisans, and diplomats, a microcosm of the empire's reach and ambition. Yet even as the Hittites reached the zenith of their influence, the seeds of decline were being sown. Natural disasters, including droughts and famines, strained the empire's resources. Internal factionalism, amplified by rivalries among the nobility, weakened centralized authority. External threats loomed as the sea peoples and neighboring kingdoms tested Hittite borders. By 1200 BCE, the empire faced a series of catastrophic collapses, cities abandoned, trade disrupted, and palaces left to crumble. Scholars debate the precise causes, but it is clear that the Hittites, like many great civilizations, were undone by a combination of internal fragility and external pressure. Yet the legacy of the Hittites endured long after their fall. Their innovations in law, diplomacy, and military technology influenced successive empires across the Near East. Their treaties with Egypt established precedents for international diplomacy. The Hittite myths and religious practices, preserved in cuneiform tablets, informed later cultures and scholars. Even the ruins of Hattusa, excavated in modern Turkey, whisper stories of a people who dared to challenge the known world and, for a time, succeeded. Historians and archaeologists today continue to uncover the depth of Hittite civilization. Each clay tablet, each monumental stone carving, offers glimpses into a complex society capable of diplomacy, warfare, and cultural expression that rivaled their contemporaries.
The story of the Hittite Empire is thus not just one of conquest and collapse, but of human ambition, ingenuity, and resilience, a reminder that even forgotten empires can leave indelible marks on the tapestry of history. The Hittite kings and the shaping of an empire. After the consolidation under Labarna I and Hattusili I, the Hittite throne became a symbol of both opportunity and peril. The empire was no longer a loose coalition of city-states. It was a centralized monarchy whose rulers wielded unprecedented power over Anatolia. But with such authority came constant threats from rebellious nobles, ambitious generals, and rival kingdoms beyond their borders. One of the most remarkable rulers to ascend the throne was Mursili I, grandson of Hattusili I. Mursili was a bold strategist, known not only for his ruthlessness, but for his vision. He led campaigns deep into Mesopotamia, even striking at Babylon, an achievement that stunned contemporaries. Unlike many conquerors of the age, Mursili understood the importance of diplomacy alongside warfare. His letters and treaties reveal a keen awareness of statecraft, emphasizing alliances, hostages, and marriage contracts to stabilize conquered regions. Yet Mursili's reign was short-lived, cut tragically by assassination, a recurring theme in Hittite politics. His death plunged the empire into a period of instability, highlighting a critical tension. The Hittites excelled at conquest, but governing a sprawling, culturally diverse empire demanded administrative skills that even the most capable kings could struggle to sustain. It was during the reign of Suppiluliuma I that the Hittite Empire truly reached its apex. Rising to power in the late 14th century BCE, Suppiluliuma combined military brilliance with shrewd diplomacy. He expanded the Hittite influence into Syria, annexing important trade cities such as Aleppo and Carchemish. His campaigns brought him into frequent conflict with the Egyptian pharaohs, yet he also skillfully negotiated alliances that preserved Hittite strength while weakening rivals. Suppiluliuma's letters to Egypt, preserved in the Amarna archives, reveal a sophisticated understanding of international politics. He demanded respect as an equal to Pharaoh Akhenaten, warning of consequences for any attacks on Hittite territory. This was a civilization capable of international diplomacy centuries before the concept was formalized in the modern world. Military innovations and the Hittite chariot. One of the Hittites' greatest advantages in warfare was their mastery of the chariot. Unlike earlier models that carried one or two soldiers, Hittite chariots were robust, carrying a driver, an archer, and sometimes a spearman, allowing for both speed and firepower. The Hittite armies were highly organized, with disciplined infantry supporting chariots and using iron-tipped weapons, a technology that gave them a decisive edge over enemies still reliant on bronze. The chariot allowed the Hittites to conduct lightning raids deep into enemy territory, disrupting supply lines and striking fear into opponents. In the Battle of Kadesh against Ramses II of Egypt, the chariots played a pivotal role. Although the battle itself was indecisive, it showcased the Hittites' ability to coordinate complex maneuvers and adapt to battlefield chaos, a sophistication rivaling any contemporary army. Culture, religion, and administration. The Hittites were more than warriors. They were a civilization of remarkable cultural depth. Their religion centered on a pantheon of gods, often adapted from neighboring cultures, including storm gods, sun goddesses, and deities of fertility and war. Rituals were conducted with strict adherence to law, and the king often acted as both political and religious leader, linking divine authority to temporal power. Hattusa, the capital, stood as a testament to Hittite ingenuity. Fortified with massive stone walls, gates adorned with lion reliefs, and a complex network of temples and palaces, it was both a military bastion and a center of administration. The Hittites adopted cuneiform writing, preserving treaties, myths, and daily records on clay tablets. These texts provide modern scholars with unparalleled insight into Hittite life, from legal codes and trade agreements to prayers and royal decrees. Trade was another pillar of Hittite strength. Anatolia's rich deposits of silver, copper, and tin attracted merchants from across the Near East. Hittite caravans carried goods to Babylon, Egypt, and the Mediterranean, while receiving exotic products such as ivory, timber, and spices. These networks not only enriched the empire, but facilitated the exchange of ideas, technologies, and cultural practices. The seeds of decline. Despite its brilliance, the Hittite Empire was fragile. Internal divisions, succession disputes, and the sheer challenge of governing a multi-ethnic empire created vulnerabilities. Natural disasters, including droughts, weakened agricultural output, leading to famine and unrest. Simultaneously, external threats increased. The Sea Peoples began raiding coastal settlements, and rival kingdoms saw opportunities to reclaim lost territories. By 1200 BCE, the empire that had once commanded respect from Egypt and Mesopotamia began to fragment. Cities were abandoned, inscriptions ceased, and palaces were left to crumble. The precise causes remain debated, but it was a combination of political instability, environmental pressures, and relentless external invasions that ultimately toppled the Hittite world. Yet, even in collapse, the Hittites left an indelible mark. Their legal codes influenced subsequent civilizations, their treaties became models of diplomacy, and their military innovations shaped warfare for generations. The ruins of Hattusa, rediscovered in the 20th century, continue to reveal treasures, from intricately carved reliefs to clay tablets recording treaties and correspondence that changed the course of Near Eastern history. The rise and fall of the Hittite Empire is thus a story of ambition, innovation, triumph, and fragility. It is a story of a people who dared to challenge the known powers of their age, building an empire in the heart of Anatolia that would echo through history long after the stones had fallen silent.
The twilight of the Hittites, collapse and chaos. By the late 13th century BCE,
The Hittite Empire was showing cracks that even the mightiest kings could not mend. Suppiluliuma II, the last known great king, inherited a realm already weakened by decades of political intrigue, famine, and external pressure. Unlike his predecessors, Suppiluliuma II faced a world that had grown far more dangerous. Rival states were emboldened, mercenary armies roamed the borders, and the mysterious sea peoples threatened Anatolia's coastal cities. The king's reign was marked by desperate campaigns to defend the empire's heartland. Hattusa, once a bustling capital of trade, religion, and bureaucracy, became a fortress under siege. Archival cuneiform tablets from this period revealed frantic messages to vassal states, pleading for loyalty and reinforcements, a stark contrast to the confident decrees of Suppiluliuma's ancestors. For the first time in centuries, the empire's unity was fractured by fear rather than ambition. Internal divisions further destabilized the realm. Noble families, each with their own armies and territories, resisted central authority. Assassinations and coups became commonplace, undermining the royal line. Scholars today interpret these events as both a symptom and a cause of the empire's collapse. A decentralized system that had once enabled rapid expansion now accelerated disintegration. The culmination of this decline was catastrophic. In 1200 BCE, a series of invasions by the Sea Peoples and neighboring kingdoms decimated Hittite strongholds. Cities that had flourished for centuries were abandoned, temples looted, and trade routes severed. The once mighty Hattusa was left in ruins, its grand walls crumbling under neglect and the desert winds. Suppiluliuma II disappears from historical records, likely killed or exiled, the empire's last ruler swallowed by the very chaos he tried to control. The collapse of the Hittites was part of a larger phenomenon historians call the Bronze Age collapse, a period of widespread upheaval across the eastern Mediterranean. Egypt, Mycenae, and Mesopotamia also suffered disruptions, yet the Hittite collapse was particularly striking because it erased one of the most sophisticated bureaucracies and military powers of the time. For centuries, the Hittites seemed almost mythical, a people known only from brief mentions in Egyptian texts or scattered Mesopotamian records. Legacy buried in the sands. Though the Hittite cities were abandoned, their legacy endured in surprising ways. Their treaties, inscribed in cuneiform, influenced neighboring kingdoms and established legal and diplomatic models that persisted for centuries. Their innovations in chariot warfare were adopted by the Egyptians and later Near Eastern armies. Religious practices and myths survived integrated into the cultures of successor states across Anatolia and Syria. Yet the physical evidence of the Hittite civilization lay hidden for millennia. The ruins of Hattusa, covered by centuries of soil and forgotten by history, remained lost to the world. It wasn't until the late 19th and early 20th centuries that archaeologists, drawn by references in Egyptian records and Mesopotamian tablets, began to uncover the traces of the empire. German archaeologist Hugo Winkler led the first major excavations at Hattusa in 1906, revealing massive city walls, grand gates adorned with lion reliefs, and temples once dedicated to storm and sun gods. Winkler's discoveries included thousands of clay tablets, some bearing treaties with Egypt, others detailing internal administration and legal codes. These texts were a revelation. They confirmed the existence of the Hittite Empire, illuminated its culture, and connected it to broader Near Eastern history. Subsequent excavations uncovered royal palaces, fortified citadels, and a complex network of streets and neighborhoods. Scholars pieced together a civilization that rivaled Egypt and Mesopotamia in complexity, yet had remained almost invisible for thousands of years. The Hittites, once thought to be a footnote in history, were recognized as architects of a sophisticated, far-reaching empire. Hittite influence on the ancient world. The Hittites' impact extended beyond the rise and fall of their empire. Their diplomatic correspondence with Egypt, preserved in clay tablets, represents some of the earliest recorded examples of international negotiation. Treaties included clauses for trade, marriage alliances, and even shared defense agreements, a testament to the empire's political sophistication. Culturally, the Hittites blended traditions from Mesopotamia, Anatolia, and the Levant, creating a syncretic civilization. Their art, reflected in reliefs, seals, and ceremonial objects, showcased advanced craftsmanship and storytelling. The Hittite pantheon of gods influenced later Anatolian cultures, and their legal codes provided precedents for justice and governance. Even military technology and organization bore their mark. Iron-tipped weapons, chariot innovations, and logistical strategies pioneered by Hittite generals were studied and adapted by neighboring powers, shaping warfare for centuries. In essence, while the Hittite political structure crumbled, their knowledge, culture, and influence survived, hidden in plain sight for later civilizations to rediscover. The Hittites in modern memory. Today, the Hittites occupy a fascinating space in history. Their story is one of ambition, resilience, and ultimate fragility, a reminder that empires, no matter how powerful, are subject to the forces of nature, human error, and time itself. Excavations continue at Hattusa, with archaeologists uncovering new insights into daily life, trade, religion, and diplomacy. Modern scholars study Hittite texts not merely as historical records, but as windows into the mindset of an empire that balanced warfare, governance, and cultural synthesis in an era when survival was never guaranteed. Every tablet, seal, and artifact recovered adds nuance to our understanding of the Hittites, proving that even a civilization erased from political maps can leave an indelible mark on human history. The rise and fall of the Hittite Empire is thus a story that resonates across millennia. It reminds us that ambition and ingenuity can build great civilizations, but fragility is ever present. And it challenges historians and enthusiasts alike to reconsider what is lost. For even in ruins, the Hittites continue to speak to us, whispering tales of kings, battles, treaties, and dreams that once reshaped the world.
Kings, generals, and the human face of power. While the Hittite Empire is often remembered for its battles and treaties, the human stories behind its rise and fall are equally compelling. Mursili II, son of Supiluluma I, stands out as a remarkable figure in Hittite history. Ascending the throne as a young man, Mursili II faced immense pressure. His father's ambitious campaigns had expanded the empire, but left its borders vulnerable, and internal factions threatened stability. Mursili's reign was a careful balancing act. He personally led military campaigns to suppress rebellions and secure the eastern territories, demonstrating both courage and strategic acumen. His annals, painstakingly inscribed on clay tablets, reveal not only his victories, but his anxieties and reflections, a rare glimpse into the personal life of a ruler from nearly 3,200 years ago. He wrote of mourning soldiers lost in battle, and even of the heavy toll that ruling an empire exacted on a young king. Supiluluma I's general Piashali also emerges from the annals as a legendary figure. He commanded Hittite forces in Syria, negotiating sieges with both diplomacy and military might. Stories from the tablets describe clever tactics, such as using feigned retreats to lure enemies into ambushes, strategies that scholars today compare to classical Greek military maneuvers. The Hittite army, disciplined and technologically advanced, relied heavily on chariot units, infantry formations, and logistical planning, making it a formidable force across Anatolia and Syria. Daily life and culture. Beyond kings and soldiers, the Hittites built a complex society. Cities like Hattusa were bustling centers of administration, trade, and religious activity. Artisans crafted pottery, jewelry, and seals, while scribes recorded economic transactions, legal judgments, and royal decrees. Families lived in stone and mud brick houses, often in tightly clustered neighborhoods within city walls. Religion permeated every aspect of life. The Hittites worshipped a pantheon of gods, including the storm god Teshub, the sun goddess of Arena, and deities borrowed from conquered peoples. Rituals often involved elaborate ceremonies in temple courtyards, sacrifices, and festivals tied to agricultural cycles. Kings played a central role in these ceremonies, reinforcing their divine authority and ensuring the favor of the gods over the state. Education and literacy were highly valued among the elite. Scribes underwent rigorous training to master cuneiform, learning to record treaties, religious texts, and historical events. This emphasis on documentation is one reason why so much of Hittite culture has survived, providing modern historians with extraordinary insight into their society. Trade networks and economic power. The Hittite Empire's prosperity relied heavily on trade. Anatolia was rich in silver, copper, and tin, metals crucial for weapons and tools. These resources drew merchants from Mesopotamia, Egypt, and the Mediterranean. Hittite caravans carried goods such as wool, grain, and timber to distant markets, while importing exotic products including ivory, precious stones, and spices. Trade was not merely economic, but also political. By controlling key trade routes and securing alliances with city-states and vassals, the Hittites reinforced their influence across the Near East. Correspondence preserved on clay tablets details agreements with Egyptian and Babylonian rulers, demonstrating the empire's sophisticated diplomacy. The Amarna letters, for example, include messages demanding respect for Hittite envoys and careful negotiation over marriage alliances, evidence of a civilization skilled in both commerce and international relations. The arts and intellectual life. The Hittites were also patrons of art and intellectual pursuit. Reliefs carved on temple walls depicted gods, kings, and military victories, often with intricate symbolism. Sculptures and seals reflected both aesthetic sensibilities and practical administrative needs, serving as markers of authority and identity. In literature, the Hittites preserved myths and legends that reveal a sophisticated world view. Stories of divine conflicts, heroic quests, and moral lessons provide insight into their understanding of human nature, governance, and the natural world. Scholars have noted similarities between Hittite myths and later Greek and Mesopotamian tales, suggesting a shared cultural dialogue across the Near East. The fall and dispersal of the Hittites. Despite their achievements, the Hittites could not withstand the combined pressures of environmental disaster, internal strife, and external invasions. By 1200 BCE, famine, political fragmentation, and the relentless advance of the Sea Peoples and other rivals forced the abandonment of cities. Families fled, relocating to smaller settlements or merging with neighboring cultures. Even in collapse, the Hittite legacy endured. Ironworking techniques spread across Anatolia and the Levant. Diplomatic practices influenced successor states. Religious motifs and myths were absorbed into other cultures. The Hittites had disappeared politically, but their influence persisted in countless ways, shaping the civilizations that followed. Rediscovery and modern archaeology. The Hittite story might have remained a historical footnote if not for modern archaeology. In the early 20th century, Hugo Winkler's excavations at Hattusa revealed the city's monumental gates, temple complexes, and royal archives. Thousands of cuneiform tablets confirm the existence of kings, treaties, and campaigns previously known only from Egyptian or Mesopotamian sources. Later archaeologists expanded on Winkler's work, uncovering residential quarters, fortifications, and temples. Each discovery illuminated new aspects of Hittite society, trade networks, religious ceremonies, and administrative structures. Today, Hattusa is a UNESCO World Heritage Site, allowing visitors to walk among the ruins of a civilization that once rivaled the greatest empires of the ancient world.
Battles, intrigue, and the last days. As the 13th century BCE drew to a close, the Hittite Empire faced relentless pressure on all fronts. The once proud cities along the Syrian frontier were under constant threat from neighboring kingdoms and raiding bands. The royal annals of Suppiluliuma II described frantic campaigns to defend Carchemish and Aleppo, cities that had served as bulwarks of Hittite power for centuries. One such battle, fought near the Orontes River, illustrates both the brilliance and desperation of the Hittite military. Suppiluliuma II personally commanded a mixed force of chariots, infantry, and mercenary archers. Against overwhelming numbers, the Hittite army employed feigned retreats and ambushes, delaying enemy advances and allowing civilians to flee fortified towns. Despite these tactics, the battle ended inconclusively. Hittite losses were significant, and enemy forces remained a persistent threat. Within the walls of Hattusa, political intrigue deepened the crisis. Noble families jockeyed for influence, while governors of distant provinces withheld troops and resources. Scribes documented secret correspondences, some revealing conspiracies to depose the king. These documents show that while the Hittites excelled at diplomacy abroad, internal governance became their Achilles' heel. Stories of the people. Beyond kings and generals, ordinary Hittites endured the chaos. Farmers, who once supplied grain to feed royal armies, faced droughts and pestilence. Artisans struggled to maintain their crafts as trade networks collapsed. Families fled cities, carrying small valuables and clay tablets, attempting to preserve knowledge against the encroaching darkness. One poignant account, preserved in a tablet discovered at Hattusa, recounts a scribe named Tarhunta, who risked his life to copy sacred texts as temples burned. He wrote of his fear, devotion, and hope that the words of the gods and kings would endure, even if stone and city crumble. These personal narratives humanize the empire's collapse, showing resilience amid catastrophe. The final collapse. By 1200 BCE, the empire's cohesion disintegrated. Hattusa was abandoned, and the northern provinces fell to local warlords. The sea peoples and other migratory groups pushed through Anatolia, scattering remaining populations. Trade ceased, agriculture failed, and written records ceased almost entirely. The Hittite political entity, which had once rivaled Egypt and Babylonia, vanished from history. Yet, even in disappearance, the Hittites left echoes. Survivors integrated into neighboring cultures, carrying language, art, and religious practices with them. Ironworking techniques, military strategies, and legal precedents survived, influencing later civilizations. The Hittites had faded as rulers, but their knowledge and innovations endured. Rediscovery in modern times. For centuries, the Hittites existed only as names in Egyptian texts, like Pharaoh Merneptah's inscriptions referencing Hatti, or in Mesopotamian chronicles. Scholars debated whether they were myth or minor tribes. This perception changed dramatically with Hugo Winkler's excavations at Hattusa in 1906. Massive gates, temple complexes, and clay tablets revealed a thriving empire of surprising sophistication.
Subsequent excavations uncovered royal palaces, administrative districts, and intricate reliefs depicting gods, kings, and military victories. Thousands of tablets offered details on diplomacy, trade, law, and daily life. Archaeologists realized that the Hittites had not only fought great battles, but had also established one of the ancient world's most organized bureaucracies. Modern historians continue to study Hittite culture, drawing connections between Anatolia, Mesopotamia, and Egypt. Every tablet, seal, and ruin adds depth to our understanding of a civilization that once dominated a key crossroads of the ancient world. The legacy of the Hittite Empire. The story of the Hittites is more than a tale of rise and fall. It is a testament to human ambition, ingenuity, and resilience. They demonstrate how a people from a rugged plateau could challenge the mightiest civilizations of their age, establishing diplomacy, law, and military strategy that would influence generations. The Hittites' legacy is visible not only in archaeological ruins, but also in the cultural memory of the Near East. Their myths and religious practices influenced neighboring cultures. Their treaties set precedents for international diplomacy. Their chariot tactics and ironworking techniques shaped warfare for centuries. Even abandoned cities like Hattusa whisper stories of human creativity and perseverance. Ultimately, the Hittite Empire reminds us that the forces of nature, politics, and human ambition are intertwined. Empires may rise and fall, yet the knowledge, culture, and innovations they leave behind can endure for millennia. The sands of Anatolia may have swallowed Hattusa, but the echoes of the Hittites continue to speak through tablets, ruins, and the imagination of every historian and traveler who walks among their stones.